There was a quote from a former Panther in a Pro Football Talk article that shows me just how far Dan Morgan and Dave Canales have to drag the Carolina Panthers away from everything that took place last season. How they have to rid themselves of the problems of the past. It comes from Hayden Hurst. Okay, Hayden Hurst signed elsewhere. He was an offseason signing last year for the Panthers, got a pretty penny, and then they moved on from him this offseason despite almost no cap savings in the move. Now, just to give you a insight, Hayden Hurst about midseason suffered a concussion. He did not play again the rest of the year. There were some reports of post-concussion amnesia. There were some very, very serious deals, and you always give everybody the benefit of the doubt when it comes to those sort of things, right? Head trauma, you protect yourself the way you want to protect yourself. Hayden Hurst said this, because when you suffer like a long-standing concussion, there's going to be questions about like, well, your future, how confident are you? Are you cleared? What's this, that's the other? He was asked, and this is the quote that he said. I will read it to you, and then I will get mad. I had the concussion, and for a week after, it was a little touch and go, but I went to the Mayo Clinic down in Jacksonville, got a second opinion, got a full, clear bill of health. The only reason I sat out as long as I did was just from the front office. There was really no point. They were 2-15 or 2-13 at the time, so there was really no point in rushing back. End of quote. I hate this with a fiery passion. I hate that more than anything I've heard about the Panthers from a season ago. I hate that so much for a bunch of reasons. The most obvious being there was a sentiment that there was no point. He implies it comes from the front office. Do you know what's the funniest part about this? Some of you may be hearing this and saying, wait a minute, you talk about tanking. You can tank in the NFL. You can intentionally bottom out in the NFL, but you tank with decisions and movements that do not touch the players and coaches' thought process. You can tank by putting together a roster that can't win, but the roster that you put together better be trying as hard as they possibly can to win, even if they don't, even if they can't. The thought that there are games that take place when you only get 17 of them a year that do not matter, that there is no point to, you need those thoughts so far away from your sideline and your locker room that it is absurd. You can't let a player that is going to be on the sideline or in the locker room, or even if he's not, even if he's just talking to guys that are on the sideline or in the locker room, think that there isn't a point in trying to win games and being out there for your guys and being available when you can. It is a cancerous, metaphorically, obviously, locker room if there is anybody with any contribution to it that thinks, oh, well, what's the point?
It's one thing if the front office and the coaches said, hey, just I know you're clear, but to protect you further, just to make sure you heal further, we're going to hold you out. That's one thing. But to say, who cares?
To say, I have a clear bill of health. He said a full, clear bill of health.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the player wants to say, I'm worried, I want to get a third opinion,
sure.
It's head trauma. Like I said, benefit of the doubt. That's why I never said a darn thing about Hayden Hurst not playing. Matter of fact, I defended him when people were calling him other things. I'm looking at this now and saying, ooh, can't say that. And do you know what's even worse? I'm going to read the last sentence again. They were 2-15 or 2-13 at the time. So there was really no point in rushing back. You're on the team. Right? Imagine a player that they didn't play well today, and they were on the field. He played in a bunch of games. They were 2-15. There's so much bad coming out of that locker room. So Dan Morgan and Dave Canales, when Dave Canales said, what was it, at the Combine, one of my benefits, one of my advantages is I don't have an emotional connection to any of these guys. That was cold-blooded. I get it now. Oh, they got $50,000 in cap savings this year for cutting Hayden Hurst. Oh, I get it now. If a front office member ever looked at me and said, you're completely clear, or the doctor's your own second opinion that you went and got from the Mayo Clinic says you have a full clear bill of health, but we don't see any point in bringing you back, I'm fighting that tooth and nail. I am, as the player, saying nothing. I don't think you understand. I had options in free agency. I chose to come here. I wanted to play with this quarterback. I wanted to play with this team. I need to get out there and make sure I'm carrying my weight because we put in all that work in training camp, and they're depending on me. You can't let that happen. The only reason I sat out as long as I did was just from the front office, there was really no point. Anybody that was privy to those conversations, pack your bags. I hope Dan Morgan was kept silent. I hope he was on the other side of the building. Anyone that was aware of those conversations that didn't throw something against the wall, see ya. Whether actually or metaphorically, right? You don't. Sometimes throw something against the wall. You don't actually have to break a phone, but you better have yelled. There better have been a "What are we doing here?" There better have been, "Do you actually like to compete or not?" We don't have they didn't have their first round pick, by the way. So I guess you could argue if they had their first round pick, it's like, hey, we were in the running for the number 1 overall pick here. You might help us too much. You got to sit this one out.
Yeah, exactly.
But they didn't even have their pick. I was saying on the air, you can go find it on our podcast. I was saying they don't have a reason to tank. I thought they were going to sneak out 2 or 3 wins in the last 4 or 5 games because there would be teams with significantly less motivation than them, or even teams motivated not to win, and they didn't have that. Turns out they were tanking for Chicago. They were telling veterans, what's the point? Stay out of this one. So Chicago could have the number 1 pick. Wildly, wildly frustrating thing to hear.
Yeah, and you say, what's the point? Well, there is a point.
Winning culture.
It's winning culture. It's also, again, establishing what it is that you want to be as a franchise.
Helping your young guys know what success looks like. Helping your young guys know what it feels like to win in the league. Passing along what to do well. I mean, I'm not saying you got to play him every snap, but somebody out there could learn something from a veteran that's played with Joe Burrow, from a veteran that's played with Lamar and Flacco. Wildly frustrating. He was on the Falcons, too. Right? He played with Matt Ryan. Pass along some information. Be there on the sideline on game day with a helmet on.